Right. So this is the governance committee meeting on October 21st, and I'll call to order at 5:32. So what I have, I'm not sure how much we'll get through today, but there were the three policies that I received, draft policies from our legal counsel. Two of them are modifications to our existing policies. That's the anti-discrimination policy and the procurement policy. The third is a additional policy that she said we ought to have, and I went and looked at the regulations on that, and it does look like we do need to adopt this particular policy statement. So I can, when we get to that one, I can talk about that. So basically, it's modifications of two of our existing policies, which we had asked her to look at to see if they needed any updates or whatever. And then this workplace violence prevention policy statement that we need to have something, in that vein. I also, you'll see in the paper, the packet I gave you there, one of the things that I have been looking into is we have three different policies that are kind of they're kind of aspirational statements of kind of statements of principle, I guess you could call them. There's the freedom to read policy, the freedom to view policy, and library bill of rights. All three of those are, and they indicate right in our policies that we've based these off of the ALA's policy statements. However, ours differ sometimes in some fairly significant ways, sometimes in ways that just, I really don't understand the rationale. And when you look at the revision history of our policies, our latest policies post-date the last revision of the ALA ones. So it's not that the ALA ones changed and ours didn't, keep up in some way. It's just that at some point in time or from the beginning or who knows what, our policies diverge in certain ways or our statements. And these are policies that haven't been looked at or readopted in quite some time. For us, it's been more than 10 years. I don't remember how old the Bill of Rights one is, but the freedom to read and freedom to view are both more than 10 years old since the last time the board has readopted them in any way or revised them or anything. So I put together kind of a little table that has the language from the ALA's statements for each of these and then compares it to what language appears in ours. Sometimes it's identical, sometimes there's just different wording, sometimes there's whole provisions that just kind of don't exist or are kind of quite a bit different. So, I don't know if we'll get to that today, but I want to talk through it, but I wonder whether, because this is kind of just these are kind of statements of principle, is there any reason why we don't just kind of follow the kind of most widely, it's a national kind of statement from, kind of authoritative body about, library governance. And if there is, I didn't see in the ways our policies differ that there was, that I could make heads or tails out of why there was a good reason for us to kind of go in a different direction or word things differently. So I just put something we can talk about if we get to that one. But I thought maybe we could start with the ones we got back from legal counsel. I don't know if anybody else has any, progress or things to say about any of the policies that other people were looking at. I think we've got plenty to deal with on this, but I don't want to not give other people a chance to, if anybody's had anything. Nothing.
I have no update.
But all good.
I mean, I've had some update and there's been Pete helped get me some feedback from staff on what they want to see with the children and dependents
Okay.
policy.
Good.
I do need to get back to them because they say they want to separate dependents, have their own policy versus children, but I don't know what they want in the dependents one. And I did start kind of going through our language to see what matches up and what we need to do. But that's it. So the conversation's happening.
Okay. Great. So I'm not sure maybe I'll start real briefly because it might be simplest with the new policy that she had recommended, this workplace violence prevention policy statement. This one that Aaron sent us is directly taken off of, it's a model policy that the the state of New York, I think it's Department of Labor, like publishes like a model policy. And this is just that exact model policy with the insert, workplace name here, Gildan Public Library plugged in. So it's, and so I was wondering, where the legal requirement comes from. This cites this labor law, section 27B. I looked at that, and that only talks about the library having a written workplace violence prevention program. And I'm assuming we have something that complies with that, like.
We do, it runs through our human resources department.
And the requirements of the actual written program that the library has to have are more extensive. They include requirements that are not in this policy statement. It's like, and so I assumed we already had the actual written policy, or program that we're required to have. So I was wondering where this comes from. And it turns out it's in the implementing regulations. They specifically lost the place where it was though. Require a policy statement. I have to find where it is. And there's also guidance that they issued about it. Where's that? Should have highlighted it. Give me just 1 second, I'll find it. Oh, here it is. Here it is. This is in the regulations implementing this statute. Workplace violence policy statement. The employer shall develop and implement a written policy statement on the employer's workplace violence prevention program goals and objectives, and provide for full employee participation through an authorized employee representative. The workplace violence policy statement shall be posted where notices to employees are normally posted. Policy statement shall briefly indicate the employer's workplace violence prevention policy and incident alert and notification policies for employees to follow in the event of a workplace violence incident. So this is so the policy statement is a kind of a brief statement that accompanies the more comprehensive written program that the library already has. Do we already have something like this? Because
I don't know that we have something posted. I'm going to have to check on that. We have a posting board in the back that has like the minimum wage and all of that stuff. We actually work on this in conjunction with our union, CSEA.
Okay.
And this is fortuitous timing, we actually have a safety committee meeting tomorrow to go over some of the findings and recommendations they have for not just workplace violence, but essentially safety in the workplace. Right. So this is good timing for us to.
And the other thing is, it's not clear to me that this necessarily has to be adopted as a board policy as opposed to just the library, since you've already adopted the violence prevention program, just adopting a policy statement to go along with it that can be posted to meet the requirements. I'm bringing it here because Aaron specifically, flagged it and as something that we needed to have and sent this model policy to us. So I don't know pros and cons or advantages or whatever of adopting it as an official board policy versus just I don't think there's anything that says this has to come as a board policy as opposed to an administrative policy. So I don't know if you.
I mean, the biggest con would be if it's a board policy, then it's longer and harder to undo it or to change it. So
and if the language ever changes in the statement, then we would have to go through that whole process as opposed to just reposting whatever the new language is.
Yes. So so maybe it might make sense just then to just say this is something that belongs at the library administration level rather than the board level, and just flag it, and then you can in conjunction with your safety committee and everything make sure we have something in place that complies with what we need to have in place. And Aaron's given us this, which again is directly just taken off the state model, so it probably is, I would think, would be fairly uncontroversial as far as.
Yeah, I don't think there would be any issues with that. I look at it almost like minimum wage, where regardless of how we feel about it, it's a requirement to have it.
Yeah.
So
whatever OSHA stuff and all that you need to
And
post.
things that you have to post, that you just have to have your place where everything's posted.
I have a question.
Yes.
In that first sentence, workplace violence presents a serious safety hazard to our agency, staff and clients. They're not really an agency to our library staff and clients or something to that. effect.
Yeah, maybe
Why
that's-
agency?
Well, yeah,
It
it's,
looks like it's just a
maybe that's,
cut and paste from some
because the particular law applies to public.
state agency.
Yeah, right, to public bodies, and, you know, and it's very comprehensive, so it applies to every kind of little municipal body or thing of any sort. But they probably use that language because, you know, this same thing is being adopted
But
by
it's
like.
ours, should we
Yeah,
change that?
yeah, we can tweak it, but that's a good point. The language doesn't quite fit us. But, yeah, so I'm fine to just kind of, we can, you know, pass this to Pete to do, you know, anything that needs to be done on that end, if people are happy with that. All right,
But again, can we could go on. When a public employee performs, when a library employee, I mean, this again is really not directed to the library, it's directed to
Yeah.
state agencies. Can we,
So what we can do is, I can actually work on this with our human resources manager, and even though the committee doesn't need to approve it, the committee should still be aware of it because it's policy adjacent. So I can just bring it back once it's been, customized for us.
okay. And that's, yeah, I think those wording things, I literally think that they literally, I think all that was done is
Took it out of the-
the
Yeah.
name Gilman Public Library was just plugged in here, and otherwise it's just the model. So there might be, you know, language here and there that, you know, is a little more generic than it needs to be, but.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we don't refer to our patrons as clients either, so.
That's fair, yeah. So anyway, okay, so we can put that one aside for now then. So then there's the other two, there's a procurement policy and the non-discrimination / anti-harassment policy. And just, it wasn't, I don't know if anyone looked at the electronic version of the procurement policy that I had sent out. It wasn't obvious from that what was changed from our existing one. So I compared them just to kind of see, and basically the formatting, like in terms of like giving the you know, numbered sections, you know, Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, those kind of things. That is changed a little, but the wording, the only thing that's changed is this part 2 that says general, starting on the first page and running through the very top of the second page, right? That part 2, that entire section is new and doesn't exist in our existing procurement policy. And then the only other thing is the very last section, which is listed as 6 unintentional failure to comply at the very end. That is also new and does not exist in our existing policy. Everything else is unchanged. So it's this new piece at the end. And I noticed as we sit here that the Roman numerals don't seem to, because the new Roman numerals have been added in. So now there's kind of a renumbering, starts over, you know, goes 1, 2, 3, and then starts over at 1 again. So we can fix that. But basically this section 2 is new material that Erin provided in the version she gave to us. And the things that are highlighted are things that we need to determine if it appropriately describes how we want things administratively to work in the library. That's where she said basically highlighted portions are things where you just need to, you know, make sure it matches the way you actually want this to run, because we just have to describe how things are, you know, how the chain of decision making is supposed to function. And in part D, she gave kind of 2 examples from other libraries that we could kind of choose from or modify or whatever, just to give an idea of how to approach this. So that's what we're looking at here. So I don't know if we want to.
so the ones that are
This is,
stricken,
well, I was looking at the procurement, the policy. That's no,
so you're doing the procurement?
yeah.
Oh,
So the new part is everything starting here onto the top of the next page, and then the very last section on the last page. Those are the parts that are new.
And sorry, Mike, the unintentional failure to comply also came from Aaron?
Yes,
Okay.
so, and I actually, let me just, I think I brought, did I bring it, I don't think I brought it, but if you look up like the existing policy, you'll see that it just ends after annual review.
Yeah,
And then that last piece is just, it was something she added onto the version that she sent to us.
no, got it. I was just making sure it had teeth. Okay, yep,
That's where it came from, so, yeah.
perfect.
So, I guess the question is, the new material, my opinion is this is a policy that we have for purposes of, just making sure we're in compliance with what state law requires of us. And so as long as our legal counsel didn't flag any problems with the other sections of it, I don't, see any big need to revisit them or dig into them because our counsel said that those parts are fine, and I'm content with that. So I think it's just to look at the new material that she has added here and just see to what extent it needs to be tweaked or modified for our purposes. So any thoughts on that? Does that make sense?
The only, of the changes she made,
Yes.
general, where it's only the library director, members of the management staff, or another person designated. Oh, nope, never mind, disregard, because it ends with the library director as the final authority. That's fine with me. Of section D, I prefer East Greenbush example more than Albany's, just because Albany is so much larger than us. That
Okay.
their sole sourcing language kind of makes sense. East Greenbush works almost unchanged for me.
Okay, you like that
Yeah.
language there?
Yeah, I don't see any changes I would make to that.
Okay. d- Yes,
In section A,
yes.
only because I have a hang up of sentences starting with it. Could we have each supervisor supported by the library administration has the responsibility to secure the required quotes or bids, et cetera.
I mean, I'm okay
Start
with
with each supervisor supported by the library administration has the responsibility to secure or is responsible for securing the required quotes, bids, et cetera.
I'd be okay with,
Support.
does anybody else have just like stylistically have any issue with that or okay with that?
Fine.
It's good. Okay, so we'll start it off with each supervisor. And then has the responsibility, that is the simplest.
Or is responsible for securing.
Okay, then we have to modify, it's not much. So each supervisor supported by the library administration is responsible for securing or investigating
No, that's another sentence.
what?
Securing the required quotes or bids or to investigate, and the two different tasks, I think.
Right, but if we're making it securing, make it investigating for
Okay.
parallel
Okay,
clauses there. We're investigating alternative suppliers to ensure the most, yeah. All right, I'm okay with that. Okay, so on part D.
I've got a comment on C.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
So two things in here.
Yeah.
One is just a typo,
Okay.
or maybe a missing word in the last sentence. In the event that a pricing or discount program, I think that needs an A in there.
Oh, okay,
I
okay.
think that's it, but I'm substantially, in the first sentence, every effort may be made or will be made to obtain the lowest cost for materials and services purchased by. I would propose that we change lowest cost to greatest value.
Is that really what we're saying though? I mean, what do you think about that, Pete? Like, are we literally looking for the lowest?
So it depends on what we want to do, and I'm not sure how much we can change from municipal law. We would get hamstrung if we said our most important thing was the lowest cost, because that happens in most state contracts or local bidding. We don't typically want the lowest cost. It's great if the lowest cost works out, but we used to say like lowest responsive or lowest lowest cost that matches the needs of the library. Greatest value, I think, gets us there.
Yeah, it sounds more.
Yeah, as long as
what you're
we're,
doing, actually.
yeah,
Right.
as long as we're allowed to do that, because I know we hung so much of our previous policy on municipal law. If we're not totally beholden to municipal law, then yeah, I would not make lowest cost the most important factor.
Yeah, let me think, you know, because if you look at the general purpose statement up at the top, that has a little, it says to facilitate the acquisition of goods and services of maximum quality at the lowest possible cost under the circumstances. So that kind of, you know, says, you know, it's balancing, you know, quality versus cost, which, you know, which isn't saying cost, you know, above all, it's saying, you know, cost for something that's, you know, of, you know, sufficient value. So maybe rewording it a little. I'm actually, as we think about this here, I don't love the every effort, because that is a little, I mean, you know, it's, you know, I would probably be more comfortable with something that said reasonable efforts will be made to, you know, it's not that we're gonna go to the end of the earth to, you know, save a penny here or there. It's that we're going to, you know, reasonable efforts to, you know, get something at you know, lower cost if it's available, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I like, I think, you know, when I say greatest value, I don't mean like, you know, the most premium product for sure. But I think in conjunction with what you describe under purpose here, Mike,
Yeah.
where is it? Maximum quality at the lowest possible cost under the circumstances. Right, that is how I would, like, that's what I would consider the greatest value. Right, so I mean, it's just a thought, right? I don't want us to be in like well, we got 3 quotes and we have to take the lowest quote because we have to take the lowest quote because that's what the policy says.
Yeah.
Well, is that what general municipal law says?
Often.
Yeah, right. I don't know whether we have to like RFP it or.
Yeah, it's, but I don't know that we're completely beholden to that.
Okay.
Yeah, like if you work for like a town government, typically it's just lowest responsive bidder.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah,
if,
that's why the state does what they.
When
do.
when I was at the fire department, we had some flexibility to pick something that was, maybe it's lowest responsive, but we didn't have to pick the cheapest quote, right? We had to pick the cheapest, like the most valuable, right?
Yeah.
The one that.
and it often shifts the burden to the organization to say this does not match our needs.
Yeah.
So that it's like, I don't know that it's ever something we get entirely tripped up by, but it helps the people who don't read the purpose statement to not just be like, oh, you have to take the lowest bidder, you know? So it's writing something like, and I don't know that we want to be redundant to the purpose, but something like a reasonable effort will be made to obtain the greatest value or the lowest cost, provided it otherwise meets the needs of the library, something like that. Because really what we're trying to articulate is we are making good use of taxpayer dollars, but we're not going to take a product or service that doesn't meet our needs.
And why put lowest cost in there to begin with?
I think it's probably from previous versions where lowest cost was the most important
Look, I'm
factor.
saying, you just said you would add greatest value or lowest cost.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean that for the document. I meant however we're framing it, like whichever way, lowest cost / greatest value, whichever we're saying.
You don't think greatest value covers?
I do. Like, I actually like that turn of phrase.
Yeah.
We say something like a reasonable effort will be made to obtain the greatest value as described in section 1 for materials and services, et cetera. That, I mean, that ties us back to lowest possible cost under the circumstances, maximum quality, guards against favoritism, improvidence, extravagance, fraud, and corruption.
And really, section C, when you get past that sentence, it's focused on how we will use state contracts, other consortiums. That's really the meat of that paragraph is these are things that don't necessarily mean lowest cost. And in theory, they still would be guarding against favoritism, et cetera.
Right. Just thinking. I'm just trying to think, like, if it makes sense to just, remove the reference to lowest cost altogether from that sentence versus kind of qualifying it like it is, in other places, just because, like, it's not the be all and end all, but getting things at a low cost is kind of one of the core purposes of having, state laws that govern, procurement in the first place is the idea of both safeguarding, public's money, but also, reducing opportunities for corruption through, favoritism to people providing, things at inflated costs or other things like that. So I don't know if it's.
I tend to agree with you. I was actually going in the same direction where I think the rest of section C about
Yeah,
state contracts needs to be its own thing. And I think as long as we're making a statement somewhere where it's like, we are balancing lowest cost with greatest value, or, that cost is a consideration in what we're doing.
right. So here's a question. I guess, like so the rest of section C after that first sentence, that's talking about, state approved pricing and discount programs and all this, that's like what that whole section is about. That first line, maybe we look at B, where we have B, where it has this materials, equipment, supplies, and services purchased by the library should be of the quality and quantity required to serve the functions of the library in a satisfactory manner. And then, maybe tack a sentence onto the end of that says, reasonable efforts, will be made to obtain such materials, equipment, services at the lowest, lowest possible price or something like that, or cost.
But you don't want to use the lowest.
Well, but if we've already said, basically, the first thing is, they gotta be of a quality and quantity required to serve the functions of the library. And then we say, and given that, we'll use reasonable efforts to get them as cheaply as possible. We say, first it's, they have to meet our needs in terms of quality, and then we'll get, whatever's the best price we can on, something that meets our needs.
So what the general municipal law says is pretty much what you're saying. It says facilitate the acquisition of goods and services of maximum quality at lowest possible cost under the circumstances. So
Yeah.
that's kind of covering all of that.
So if we just grab that half a sentence from purpose and we substitute that half sentence from maximum quality through fraud and corruption, and we plug that in for lowest cost, I think that solves our problem.
Right.
Right, I also think if you take that sentence and move it from C to B, that makes sense as well.
So what is that sentence gonna read?
So, okay, so what B will have the existing sentence in B, and then follow that with reasonable efforts will be made to obtain
The maximum quality.
maximum quality at the lowest possible cost under the circumstances.
Yeah, and then do we take the rest of the sentence and to guard? Or do you just want to pin it at maximum quality at the lowest possible cost under the circumstances?
I think that just I think that's, because I think that's enough for that second, we've already set it up in the purpose up at the top.
Sure.
And so. To obtain. Okay, so it's this language, maximum quality at the lowest possible cost. Okay, and we'll move that up, all up to B. And then C will be the rest of what's now in C, everything from purchases that can be made, all that down. That works for me. Does that make sense to people? Okay. All right.
Another typo perhaps, purposes, second sentences, public monies, MONIES.
Where's that? I'm sorry.
Second sentence or second line, in purpose. Economical use of public money is in the best interest of the taxpayers.
Oh, monies. Oh, okay.
I've never seen EYS.
Yeah, it's usually IES.
Yeah.
All right, so we can. All right. Is that how it's spelled in our existing policy?
Yep, so it's been unchanged for 15 years.
All right, well,
I do have like a follow-up question for you, right? So the library director in general, in A, right? So, you have final authority on all purchase decisions. Um, how does that gel with the first sentence that members of staff or other person may commit the library to purchases?
So that's part of what I was juggling with when I was first offering corrections, and having that final sentence in there, I think just kind of trumps the whole thing, which is why I can live with it.
Right.
In practice, the only person who can authorize is me, but that said, I can designate other people, and it doesn't have to be like a formal, I give you permission every time. But that said, like anytime we enter into a contract or pay a bill, I should be approving it or aware of it. So it's one of those things that I don't know if in the policy it reads this way, but I read that whole thing and then that last sentence is the truth. The director has the final decision.
Yeah.
In practice, it's the staff enter into paying bills, they hit my desk, I review them, and if there's actually a problem, that's my opportunity to be like, no, I don't authorize this.
But I mean, I assume in practice, there's, like, for example, just like purchasing books, right? I mean, those
Right.
purchases are made without you signing off on everyone before it's made. So there are
Right.
members of the library staff who are committing the library to purchases without you, individually approving those. I think this is, maybe it could be worded differently to kind of make it more clear, but I read this as just saying, you have final say, but you can delegate this to other members of the staff. It's not explicit, but I think that's how I understand it.
Yeah, no, and the book example is actually a really good example, because if I had to approve every book that came through, we never did. We'd buy 3 books a week. But yeah, in theory, if I didn't approve of it, that I would take away the delegation and be like, okay, not you.
Okay, so, so let's look at D then. So we have the language, and Pete, you recommend the East Greenbush language, which you said you think more or less we could just take that as is.
As
in your
a,
opinion?
as a starting point,
Yeah.
like if we want to dig into it, we might find things to change, but I think their language is closer to what we do. So in certain situations, solicitation of alternative proposals or quotes is not practical. I'm fine with that. We might leave their examples, but like emergency combinations of professional services positions. So I don't know that we need to list that, but we could also just leave it. In each of these cases, the requesting department and library director shall analyze, justify, and clearly document the reasons behind the award. I think that's fine and fair. No award shall be made without the library director's approval. Keep that. So their last sentence is actually interesting, and it ties into a board action that we took recently and that we, I think, should have been taking every year. But it's the board authorizes the library director to purchase without bidding or securing alternative proposals or quotations where time is a crucial factor. It also gets into under procedure where we have non-competitive bidding, purchases under 10,000, or public contracts, public works under 20,000. I wonder if we should just codify that and be like, the board shall authorize this annually, because that's part of what we've been referring to as the library's discretionary spending.
Right.
And the reason I think that we had been doing it as 10,000, 20,000 was to align it with the procurement policy. But basically it's the board saying, if we don't require competitive bidding under $10,000, then the library director doesn't need approval because there's nothing to approve. So I don't know how the two dovetail together, or if we want to continue annually approving the board, having the board approve the library director spending. I think either way would work. It's just if we do it annually, we have to add it to our annual actions.
Right.
How is what we are considering for D different from what the next two pages describe?
I think it's spelling out, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
There's emergencies, true leases, sole source situation combinations, that's all, that's
That's all
E,
listed.
G, H, I, J, under I, under whatever numeral that is. Right, there's statutory exemptions in there. There's adequate documentation.
So one of the things is the, my question is, right, the difference between formal bidding and, you know, they describe it as solicitation of alternative proposals or quotes, right? So there's a difference between whether, so just because the question is, do we still, even where formal bidding is not required, do we still have an obligation in theory under the state rules to be, you know, looking, you know, getting quotes or prices or whatever, even if it's, you know, it's like if you have, I'm not phrasing this clearly, you get what I'm saying or not?
No, we do. So for,
Right.
the easiest one is purchases under $10,000. If, like, when we were looking at roof work,
Right.
we do, whether or not it's on paper, the library has an obligation to get multiple bids and not just take the first bid.
Right.
Um,
So I think as I see it, this under 3 here, where we have this list, the non-competitive bidding category and the competitive bidding category, right? So that's telling us, okay, it's under $10,000, for example. That's not something where we need to do, you know, formal bidding on it. But that doesn't mean we don't still have to get multiple quotes and try and compare prices on it. But this provision here on the D on the first page, that's saying situations where we don't even have to get another, because like, for example, an emergency situation,
if a tree falls in the library, we're not gonna get 3 bids.
we can just call somebody and say, we gotta get rid of this now, come do it, because it's a, you know, an emergency situation.
So there is a difference between, this is a question. There is a difference between solicitation of alternative proposals or quotations and non-competitive bidding.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
because non-competitive bids means we're not ranking them against each other. Solicitation of alternative proposals would be, we're doing our due diligence. We're making sure that we're getting the right answer. So like,
But it's
And-
not a
and-
formal
it's not.
process and it might be based on other factors.
Because yeah, the experience I have in municipal government is much more formal, where there's a rubric where you have to show your work and show this is
Right,
why we're
scoring
picking.
and
Yeah.
all that.
I mean, I think the purpose of section D, and maybe we were being too literal with using the examples, I think the intention from the note on the front was when we wouldn't do any of these things, which it really just boils down to emergency and professional service that can't be replicated.
Yeah.
And then it goes into, maybe we should consider putting in something that it's like, if it's on, what we do if it is under $10,000, like we solicit multiple bids, but it is not a competitive bidding process.
Okay, so section D then creates an obligation to do your due diligence.
I think so. Section D is basically saying, these are the times where we're just doing whatever needs to be done. And then setting that aside, we have to determine, is it a competitive bid or not? And then if it's not, this is what we do. So we could do something, we could just leave that first sentence, in certain situations, through practical, And then, just say, in the event of an emergency, sole source situation, or combination of professional services purchases, the library will forego the solicitation of alternative proposals. It's that last one that's getting me, the combination of professional services. I think what they're saying is they're like, if there's only one person in the world who does tree removal, then that's who we're going to for tree removal. I'm just not sure how to say that aside from sole source situation, because I think that's what it's describing.
Wait, and which line is it?
Line 2, under the East Greenbush example, the combination of professional services and purchases. I'm just not sure what that's getting at.
I would take that when it's combinations, I think that's, so, because you don't have to bid professional services, so I think if it's professional services and they're providing goods along with those professional services, then it's a package deal that you do together, right? It's like, that's how I would read that.
So like we
So-
get a balloon maker and they bring their own balloons. We're not gonna make them get out the balloons.
Something like that, yeah.
I wouldn't draw, I can draw your attention to 4 on the last page, or A. Following circumstances, sole discretion of the governing body, solicitation for alternatives is not in the best interest.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not opposed to the addition of a section D, it just seems kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of,
Repetitive.
we just redundant.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, that's what I was looking for. That's the examples.
So this was put in by the attorney.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Maybe she just didn't,
yeah,
Read all the way
it's
through.
kind of redundant.
yeah, I think it's pretty redundant.
Which is the next D.
Is there anything else in D that we don't want to?
I mean, I would just take that first sentence from the East Greenbush one and have that be the preamble. Oh, no, it's already in there.
It's in
No,
there.
it's in there. No, I would just take it.
Okay, so we'll just stick with what we have under.
Yeah.
there. The only thing is, it has that line, I don't know, no awards shall be made without the library director's approval. Which, if we look at this, that, I don't know if we need that. Because that could go for 1, 2, and 3 on this list, but it's not number 4, where, it's very small. Determine for which solicitation and competition would not be cost effective, the library director to approve each of those.
I mean, I think that's part of what makes it not cost effective. is that the
Yeah.
director has to approve it.
Yeah. So, I don't know if we don't need that necessarily, because we've already have the statement above about the source of authority, the library director being the final authority on purchase decisions already. But do we need to specify that when we have emergencies or things like that, where we're foregoing the normal, the normal requirement for procuring, or getting solicited,
I don't think so.
all right, so we can drop that. All right,
How are you dropping?
so, this D, because it's redundant with this Roman numeral 4 on the last page. So,
You're dropping this whole thing.
yeah. Just get rid of all that. All right,
Okay. You ready? So go to C on under 2C.
What, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, just again, but we just say the purpose of this policy is to assist.
Oh, rather than is the purpose of this policy? I mean, I'm fine with that, if we want to just make, stylistically, to do that, I don't have a problem with that, it does read better that way.
Mhm.
Purpose of this policy is to assist. All right. All right, so,
I mean, if we're making tiny changes, right, like,
Which-
can we, non-competitive, can we capitalize C? I.e., like, do we, county and state are capitalized, does that matter? Professional services is capitalized, does that matter?
where,
that's under determining the second page, non-competitive bidding, competitive bidding.
Oh, okay.
Just making that consistent with,
Yeah.
with the, like the direct language that Barb's suggesting, right? Like,
So you want to make the non-competitive, make the C
yeah,
capitalized?
capitalized competitive, right? And then, New York State's fine in C. E, we can change county to a lowercase c. F, we can change state to a lowercase s. I, professional services to a lowercase s.
I'm not sure about county and state. Because sometimes when you do state, like capitalized, it's kind of, you're referring to the specifically New York State, since we're in New York State. If you do state lowercase, it's just like any state, generically, obviously, can't think of a situation under which this library would have a contract with some other state other than New York.
I think that would be very strange. Yeah, I mean,
I think you're right, Brad.
But yeah, something when, it's capitalized that, like that, you're talking about, the state that we're talking about there, the state that's relevant or whatever, so it's specifically New York State, just as a shorthand.
Does county then bind us to Albany?
I would expect it to. I mean, I was struggling to think if there's something where I'd go to Schenectady County, since in theory, we service some of their residents. So I can't think of an example where I'd be going to them, but.
I don't know, but yeah, but I can, professional services, I don't see any reason that S should be capitalized there, so we can get rid of that one. County, I don't know.
I think the intention of it was that we would purchase under Albany County, which
Yeah.
is mostly what we're going to be doing,
Yeah.
but.
All right, anything else? So I can take the edits we've done here and kind of clean it up with those in, and I'll kind of recirculate it and everybody can just kind of give it a look and make sure everything looks okay.
And then
So,
I know I tacked on to another point I was making, but either adding language to it that every year the
Okay.
board sets the limits for purchase, or if section 3 covers that and the board doesn't actually have to set the library's limits, if we just say that it's under $10,000, it's at the director's discretion.
We have annual review under 5.
Yep. And that's by the treasurer, which I thought was interesting.
If you're gonna add that, shouldn't that be like a number 7? So it's sort of at the end?
Yeah, or under, I think this is what Matt was saying, if we just tweaked 5. Because I don't think in practice the treasurer has been responsible for conducting the annual review.
no, and in practice, board has not been annually reviewing these policies and procedures. I mean, this was last adopted in 2010, and I don't think there's been significant review of it, so it's just, if we want to match our actual practice, we could say the board shall, annually approve the, limits, under which the, I don't know how to phrase it, but the director's discretionary, spending or whatever.
Is there a way to state, and I know some policies you have to review annually and others can go for 20 years.
Right.
But I don't know if this is one that by law has to be, reviewed annually. I mean, sometimes when they pass these laws, they'll write that one way or the other. But it can't hurt to at least put in what Pete's asking.
Right. And I mean, an annual review, if nothing has changed, then the annual review, as everyone reads it, says, yep, no changes.
And we're taking out that treasurer shall be responsible for conducting.
Yeah, that just doesn't seem like it's.
It doesn't seem like it's the appropriate person, at least in the scope of how we've been using our treasurer.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, so we should change that if, yeah. Yeah, comptroller's website says the GML requires governing boards to review their procurement policies annually. So it looks like this is one
Okay,
of those
well,
that needs to be
so
reviewed.
I want, yeah, it's, you know, we have those couple other things that every, year that we, like the conflict of interest policy and, those are ones we have to have people sign, specifically, but is there another one besides the conflict of interest? There's a couple policies that we distribute every year in the July, annual meeting and everybody, and so maybe we have to toss this in and just say, we're required to review this every year as part of this process or whatever, and then, we can vote on the,
And you can cite
Yeah,
those
as we
the
said.
law itself.
Yeah.
That's why we're,
And then one other thought here under 5, Barb, to your point, we have the last sentence starts, "It is contemplated." So if we could just make that.
That is,
yeah, well, so here's what I would say. I think, so I guess it sounds like we have to keep that first sentence and we should just make sure we're actually doing it.
Yeah.
So we'll keep the annual review piece of it. Then the next part, the treasurer shall be responsible. I think we just get rid of that because we have, well, that's different. Because I think we have some, well,
Should that be the director?
we have some
In the direct-
provisions in the, I remember when we adopted, I think when we adopted the new investment policy, there was provisions where the treasurer is responsible for kind of reviewing the control structures involved in those, investment decisions and that kind of stuff, right?
we did.
Something like that.
but couldn't you say?
But this is a little
the treasurer-
different.
Treasurer in conjunction with the director? I mean, the director in conjunction?
Yeah, I
With
just,
the treasurer?
well, I guess the question is this something that because the treasurer is looking at, all the, receipts and things we get after the fact and making sure everything is accounted for properly under, the correct, budget line items and things like that. But is he really looking into the process by which we get, quotes for purchases and things? I mean, that kind of is a step beyond, he's like, that's kind of more down in the weeds than his role is at this point. It's getting him even more into that. I think that's, especially given that we are not a library with a paid treasurer and we have a volunteer treasurer, that seems.
Yeah, because I remember we talked about this when we were doing the investment policy, and I'm looking back through it right now, because we asked to change, originally we just had like the chief fiscal officer, and I made sure it was the chief fiscal officer and the library director. So in our internal controls, the responsibilities with the CFO and the library director in consultation with the finance committee and the treasurer.
Right.
So the language would be more consistent to say the director in consultation with the treasurer.
All right. So we have the thing saying the board shall annually review it, and we have to have that based on the law, it sounds like. So,
Yeah.
so we keep that. So then maybe it's this part. I think it's more, not that, if the board has a responsibility of annually reviewing the procurement, the policy, I don't think we need to say that again in this next line. I think it's the second part of it, evaluating the internal
Yeah, I think
control
that's
structure.
internal.
So I think maybe we say the director shall be responsible for an evaluation of the internal control, the director in consultation with, do you think the treasurer should have a role in that too, or does that make sense?
A consulting role, yeah.
So the director in consultation with the treasurer shall be responsible
The
for,
treasurer or the business manager?
I think the purpose, because the business manager reports to the director, the purpose of having the treasurer do it is to give that outside professional perspective. So I think it's okay that way. In theory, I'd be consulting with the business manager.
all right, so how does this sound? First sentence stays as is, governing board shall annually review these policies and procedures. Second sentence says, the director, in consultation with the treasurer, shall be responsible for conducting an annual evaluation of the internal control structure established to assure compliance with the procurement policy.
Yep.
All right, and then do we even need this last one? This compilation, I mean, we said we're gonna do it annually, we don't need to say they may do it.
Yeah, it's kind of meaningless.
Yeah.
It's like during
Right.
annual or another time.
So I think we lose that last one. All right.
Do we want to reference in that first sentence that this is tied to GML 104B4 so that if 15 years from now, someone's looking at it again, they're like doing this exercise again, wait, do we really have to review it?
Oh, in the,
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good idea.
okay,
Yeah.
sure. So what's the site for that?
General Municipal Law 104B4.
The rest of the policy just references 104B. Is that safe to leave it at that?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different stuff in there, but,
All right, so do we want to say pursuant to
Four is
GML
only-
104-B for like the governing board shall annually review these policies and
yeah,
procedures?
something like that.
Okay. I'll add that. Pursuant to General Municipal Law, Section 104B4, the governing board shall annually review these policies and procedures.
Can we
And then we go into
annually review this policy?
what?
Can we just, instead of these policies and procedures, just annually review
This
this policy?
policy?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm good with that. Yes.
It's actually two different reviews. The board's reviewing the
Yeah.
policy, the director's reviewing the procedure.
Yes, yeah, I think that's right. Good at it. That's good. All right, we're just about out of time for today. Does anybody have anything else on the procurement policy?
I just have a question.
Yes.
I'm looking at 6.
Yes.
And there's like 2 double negatives in here. And so the unintended, I'm just trying to make sure I understand what this means, right? So the unintentional failure to comply with the provisions of the GML shall not be grounds to void action taken or give rise to cause of action. So if you accidentally or unintentionally or negligently don't follow the GML, who does not have grounds to void the action and who is not given rise to cause of action against the library?
Probably the people we're dealing with,
Yeah,
like,
I think,
like whoever you're getting books from or whoever, right?
I think well, in this case, it might be, and I don't know if we can, but like a competitor, for example, right? So suppose there's something we were supposed to get multiple bids, but somebody, for whatever reason, didn't. They're like, oh, we need to get somebody in here to fix this or that or whatever. They just call somebody, get somebody to come in, and then you have some competitor that gets wind of it and says, hey, you never got bids or things on this. That's invalid, or, I should be able to come in and say, well, sorry, we made a mistake, but we already did it. It doesn't void it. It kind of,
Right,
That's
it
where I would
stops
see
them
that.
from suing, so because,
you know,
like in the state, we get sued all the time for
I mean, we
violating
can't,
RFP
just by saying you can't sue us doesn't necessarily.
Right.
mean you can't.
But it's,
But it cuts off, it cuts off an avenue for somebody to say, well, based on your own policy, I have
Right.
grounds to sue you for this. You say, no, not on our policy. Maybe you have independent grounds under state law, but not on the basis of our policy. You can't sue us just because we didn't follow our own policy here or whatever, it is what, there's only so much you can do to prevent people
legal
from suing.
speak, yeah. Right.
If they have grounds to sue you, they may have grounds to sue you. There's nothing you can say that's gonna take that away, but.
And it really is aimed at, the unintentional, right, the mistake.
Right.
Instead of like a discrimination or, something of that nature.
Right, because unintentional and negligent are 2 different things.
Right.
Right, so,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will try and clean these up and put these edits in, and then I'll kind of circulate it and people can make sure that, that I'm introducing new typos in the process. We can, so I think, since this was kind of a rescheduling from, our October meeting that we never had at the beginning of the month, I think we still have, in theory, another first week in November meeting scheduled before next month's thing, right?
We do, Amy just sent now earlier.
I think it was the 6th, yeah.
Okay.
From 5:30 to 6:30, and then personnel is after that.
Yes.
Okay, so if everybody is still good with that, then, then we'll go ahead with that and,
Right.
and we can tackle the non-discrimination, anti-harassment policy and possibly the freedom to read, freedom to review, that kind of stuff. And if anybody else has anything they want to throw in the mix that's more important or that we want to hit. I had I'll just flag one thing that anybody can give their thoughts on. The non-discrimination, anti-harassment, I mean, I thought the edits, I didn't really have any real issue with them. I don't really have a problem with it, but part of it read kind of weird to me, and it's on the bottom of the first page. It's the new language under the sexual harassment section. And it's, the thing I found odd was, so it's in the second paragraph, there's a bunch of new language that starts with understanding gender diversity. And it's just, like, the thing I found weird was, it's, the phrasing there, it's, whatever, I don't really have a problem with it or not, but it almost sounds more like something you'd get in like a training, seminar rather than something that is like policy language that's describing it. The thing that I thought was odd is, the state has, in state statute, it has an official definition of what gender identity means for the purposes of anti-discrimination law. And that's not in our policy anywhere. And you'd think you'd have the definition that's actually like the legally binding thing rather than those statements.
Did this
So,
change language come from the?
yeah, it
attorney?
came from the attorney. Like, so I looked it up, and because they have, like, this is in the, in the executive law, they identify, or they define what gender identity means for purposes. And I would think this language, just kind of plug that in, and that kind of says, okay, this is the law defining. It's pretty broad. I mean, I don't, I don't know, just seemed to me.
A quick read, it feels like it belongs more in our handbook than in the
Yeah.
policy, because it's more explanatory, it's almost.
Exactly, that was my
Yeah.
feeling reading. I was like, okay, this is explaining, but it doesn't, it seemed odd I would think it'd be more useful in place of that to just say, gender, this is how they define it here. Gender identity or expression means a person's actual or perceived gender-related identity, appearance, behavior, expression, or other gender-related characteristics regardless of the sex assigned to that person at birth, including but not limited to the status of being transgender. It's like
Is
pretty.
it from the human rights law? Where is it?
No, this is from the executive law. It's the definitions, of the executive law. But it's, that's like a, broad definition for, and something like that, like some, whether that's the exact language we want or something like that, but something that kind of, just if we feel like we need a definition because the language itself is not self-defining enough or whatever, I don't know that we do or not, but if we think we do, we could pull an actual definition out of somewhere rather than having this language that seems more like, this is
Like a
very important to
training.
understand. And sure, that's kind of like, I expect that in a training program, not in a, or like you said, a handbook or something like
Yeah,
that.
totally.
So that was my only comment I had. So just people can think about that, what people think, and we'll take that up next time, I guess.
So the underlying is what she put in.
The underlying stuff is the changes from our existing policy, yeah. All right.
Great.
All right, well, thanks, everyone. What time is it now? It's 6:34. We have to vote to adjourn.
We adjourn.
A motion to adjourn. Second, Barb. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Adjourned at 6:35.
Thank you.